Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. It's Tori, and today we're going to be talking about all of the books that I read in April. Now, I had a awesome reading month in April, and I finished 6 books, which was a good kind of dial it back a little bit from March when I went a little crazy and read 10. So it felt good to just kind of slow the reading pace down a little bit in April, and I got to some books that have been on my TBR for ages. I got to some books that really were just as good as I was hoping they were going to be, which was amazing. I had a couple of buddy reads that were super fun. So all in all, I have no complaints. April was awesome. Let's get into the books that I read. The first book that I started the month off with is such an incredible book, and this is one that's been on my TBR forever, and it's one that I've been wanting to pick up. It's been staring at me from the shelf for so long, and I finally just decided, you know what? It's time. And that is All the Gallant Men by Donald Stratton, who is a survivor of the USS Arizona, which is one of the battleships that was bombed during the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. And Pearl Harbor, as I've said on my channel before, is kind of a time frame of history that I've always been incredibly interested by. I've always been interested in stories of the survivors, stories of what was happening in Japan at that time, stories of the Japanese American families that were affected by and after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Just that whole situation has always been something that's been really fascinating to me. And one of the things that I loved, this is a 5-star, memoirs are tough for me. I very rarely don't give them 5 stars unless I think that they're really poorly done, because it's somebody's life story, and especially because I read so many survivor life stories, it's just kind of an instant 5-star unless it was absolute crap, which obviously this was not. My cats decided to fight now that I sat down to do a video, of course. Will you guys knock it off and be nice to each other? Is that a thing we can do? Say hello to everyone, Novia. Interrupting our regularly scheduled programming with cat content. You say hello? You say hello to the people? I love you. Stop fighting. One of the things I think Donald Stratton does so brilliantly, and obviously Ken Gear, who was the person that helped him write it, is a lot of times military memoirs can get very heavy on military detail, and that can be a lot for somebody who might not be used to that. Somebody who might be looking for a military memoir that's a good entry point might feel pretty overburdened with some of the level of detail that a lot of military books have. This is a book that I would hand to someone who's looking for a military memoir that doesn't have a lot of experience or doesn't want a lot of that overburdened detail. This is phenomenal. And I think for somebody who does enjoy the military detail, it was still incredibly impactful to read, and I didn't feel like I was missing anything, partially because I've done a lot of study into this era before and this event. So I didn't feel like my mind was filling in all the gaps. But for somebody who maybe doesn't have as much experience with that historical event, this would be a great entry point, because Donald Stratton really focuses in on the heroism of the men he was surrounded by on the Arizona. He tells a lot of the backstory of the ship and how they got onto the ship and how their everyday life was a little bit, and he gives us a look into who these men were. And I mean, the sheer number of men who survived, the sheer number of men who went down with this ship compared to the survivors is just, it's hard to comprehend, and it's really difficult for someone like me who's never been in a situation like this or even close to one to even fathom the horror and just loss of an event like this. And so I think Don Stratton does a phenomenal job putting it in terms that really let you be there as closely as you can be and focus on the right things, if that makes sense. He doesn't, he doesn't belabor the gore, but he doesn't back away from it either. And he really focuses on the loss of the people that he was around. And I think that that's such a beautiful tribute to his comrades. Don Stratton has since passed away a couple of years ago, but what an incredible memoir, you guys. This is one that I would highly recommend for anybody who's interested in reading military historical accounts. After that, I needed to go back to something a little bit lighter, so I picked up Blood Reunion by J.C.M. Byrne. This is book 3 in his Hybrid Helix series, which is a superhero space opera that kind of has light flavors of everything we love about Marvel, especially the older Marvel stories. Rohan is a super-powered tow chief of the space station Wistful, and he's trying his darndest to just have a comfortable retirement and somehow keeps getting dragged back into all of these conflict situations. And in this book, we come back to Wistful after being on Earth in book 2, and it was so awesome to see a lot of my favorite characters from book 1 appear back in the story, and this time they're all up against ancient space vampires, which is a really cool concept, and I loved that about it. I was really happy to see him go back this direction after book 2, because book 2 didn't really land as well with me as I was hoping it was going to. Book 3 definitely took it back in a direction that felt a lot more familiar, that instantly pulled me in a little bit more, and the relationships between Rohan and his motley crew of friends is just delightful, and I love it. It is literally like reading a really solid Marvel movie, but also cooler in some ways. Like J.C.M. Byrne, I think, plays with the alien aspects of the world a little bit more. It leans a little bit more towards like a Guardians of the Galaxy kind of vibe, which I love because I'm a big fan. This one did feel a little bit dialogue heavy for me, which I wish there had been more description of what we were seeing and the environment a little bit more, because there were a lot of conversations, long conversations in this book, that did start to feel a little bit less engaging, especially as I got toward the second half of the book. But yeah, this was a solid entry into the series, and I look forward to reading book 4 in the future. Next up, I did a whole video on this book, so feel free to watch that for more thoughts. But briefly, I'm going to talk about my experience with the book version of The Princess Bride by William Goldman. This book, what I will say in my wrap-up here, please go watch again the video for the rest of my opinions on this. I was not impressed with this, you guys. This one I thought was gonna be a lot more focused on the actual Princess Bride story that I was familiar with from the movie, and I went into it, you know, with pretty much open expectations in terms of I wasn't expecting it to be just a repeat of the movie. I knew it was going to be a little bit darker in tone, and all of that was fine. But all of the more meta William Goldman inserting a fictional author and talking about the previous editions of this book, which obviously never existed, but he made it into part of the story, and him just interrupting The Princess Bride constantly to talk about this fictional author and his own opinions on writing style and this, that, and the other thing. I know that there are a lot of people who probably enjoy that. I am not one of them. But overall, for this one specifically, I was bored to tears and I really didn't like it. So my official opinion is I prefer the movie, and I think that that is the better version of this story, specifically if you want the story of Wesley and Buttercup and Fezzik and Inigo and etc., etc. But yeah, I've read it. It's off the bucket list now. Peace out. All right, next I picked up Newcomer by Keigo Higashino, and I read Malice by him a couple of months ago and really loved it. He has a kind of softer why-done-it approach to mystery thriller, and I really am liking that a lot. I've been kind of getting my feet wet with mystery thriller, as you guys know, and finding out what I like, what tropes I like, what tone I like in that genre, and that's been really fun. I loved this book, you guys. He has such a fantastic, almost wholesome approach to his character work. The murder mystery that happens in the beginning of the story is still very much a solid undertone throughout the whole book, but Detective Kaga is such a just kind-hearted, genuine character, and he walks into these communities and he looks at all the details and he spends time getting to know the people around the murder, whether they were directly or indirectly related or just hadn't even heard about it yet. He just kind of quietly and unassumingly steps into these spaces, and the murder takes place in this tiny little kind of small town vibe community within the larger city of Tokyo. And it's been there for generations. There's all these shopkeepers and people that are like multi-generational owners. And Detective Kaga really just steps into their lives. And Higashino doesn't even write from Detective Kaga's point of view very much in the book, which I actually really like. And he did that a little bit with Malice too, but where Malice was really an in-depth zoom in on a single character, Newcomer gave me a community character exploration, which I thought was really cool. Suffice it to say, I am a big fan, and I have 3 more books of Higashino's that I have yet to read, and I can't wait. And now I'm really hoping that more of his work is translated so that I can continue reading after I exhaust what I have, because I'm really enjoying this. I love the slightly softer, I don't want to say softer isn't really the right word, but it's a quieter approach to murder mystery and thriller, and it still portrays a horrific crime. You still have this like quest to figure out who and why, but it doesn't feel so like it's not going to leave you with nightmares, if that makes sense. Which I know for some people is going to be a turn off. For me, I actually really, really like it because I'm such a character nerd. He's giving me everything that I want as a transition into murder, mystery, and thriller. All right, next up was my chonker for the month, and that was Gloves of Eons by Andrew D. Meredith. This is book 3 in his Collation saga. In this series, he really delves into faith and culture and religion and all of the different nuances in that. I think so often in fantasy series we see faith and religion portrayed very single-faceted or very reductive, and Meredith really just expands. Like, it's so interesting to see how layered all of these different belief systems are and how each individual character has their own particular walk of whether that's belief, disbelief, rejection, and everything in between. And I just really appreciate the nuance with which he tackles that topic within fantasy, because I do think it is an element that often gets kind of either used as a more heavy-handed theme, or it doesn't feel realistic because it doesn't feel as layered as it does in real life. So huge kudos again to him for that, because I think that is a huge strength of this series. And also what was cool about this book is that I'm at the point in the series, and I love getting to this point in fantasy series, where I'm starting to feel the payoff of having spent time with these characters for multiple books. And I opened the pages and I was like, oh, hey, and hey, it's this person. And I love getting to that point in a series where I'm like really invested in these characters, and we've got some history together. And so that was a really fun, I haven't felt that with a series for a while, just because I haven't been continuing series as much as I need to. So that felt amazing, and it was fun to reconnect with these characters, and I'm just really excited to pick up Dread Knight now, the 4th book in the series. He doesn't have a 5th book yet, he's working on it right now, and I'm a little nervous that I'm going to get to the end of Dread Knight and really need the next book, and it's not going to be out yet. But highly recommend the Collation Saga for anybody who hasn't picked it up yet, if that sounds interesting. And last but not least, this is my book of the month, you guys, and it was a very tight race between some of these books because, I mean, I had a great time reading, other than Princess Bride, but we'll just leave that over there. But the last book that I read was Escape from Camp 14. So Escape from Camp 14 is the story of a North Korean escapee. Dong-hyuk was born in a political prison in North Korea, and that was all he ever knew. The other memoirs that I've read of North Korean defector stories are usually people who were raised in North Korea, but they kind of had a culture shock of, you know, either they were born on a very, you know, low end of the political hierarchy, or they were born on the high end and then they had a fall from grace. So I've read those kind of stories before, but to start in the political prison and to hear the story of someone who literally knew nothing else until he was in his early adulthood, when he escaped, and seeing the fallout of how that affected him as a person and how that formed his mind. It was truly mind-blowing to read his story, and I couldn't put it down. And one of the things that I think that Blaine Harden and focuses on really well, a part of Dong-hyuk's story, is he really stays with Dong-hyuk when it comes to the internal journey and how it's not linear, and how people often, I think with stories like this, want the pretty package with a bow on it at the end, and we don't really get that here. I really appreciate the way that they portrayed Dong-hyuk's journey past when he escapes from North Korea, and the slow, tiny steps that he has to take toward healing and some sort of normal life. Because how on earth do you adjust to, you know, everything outside of North Korea when not only is it the only thing you've known, but he had literally no idea, even some of his own country's information that a lot of other North Koreans grew up with and just knew, he was completely blindfolded from. This is the kind of book that I wish I had read in college. I'm really glad that I'm having the opportunity to hear the stories of these survivors now in adulthood, but it is something that I feel very strongly should be in every college, social studies, literature, everything, because the fact that this kind of stuff is still going on, that there are still people in 2025 who are treated like this, is just mind-blowing to me, and I really viscerally hate it. And I think that we need to be listening to these stories, and we need to be aware of what's really happening to these people. So that's my little soapbox for today, and I'll step down, but highly recommend this and the other North Korean defector stories that I've read to anyone that will read them. I don't really hesitate recommending these to people as much as other books. Like, I won't ask you, well, what do you like to read? It doesn't matter. Read these. This one, Girl with Seven Names, Every Falling Star, please read them, because I think more people need to be aware of the stories of these people. All right, well, on that note, those were all of my reads from April, and what a great month, you guys. I really enjoyed my reads, and was glad to get back into some memoir last month. That's a genre that I really hold near and dear to my heart. I love reading stories of survivors, and I got to read 2 exceptional ones in April. So yeah, and again, huge thank you to the people who are vulnerable enough and brave enough to share their stories, and not only for themselves, but for the people that aren't at a position or able to share their stories. I think that voice is so incredibly important, both Dong-hyuk's from Escape from Camp 14 and Don Stratton's from All the Gallant Men. I'm just so grateful to have had the chance to read their stories and to share them with you guys. So I would love to know, if you guys have read memoirs in the past, what memoirs have really stuck with you. Let me know down in the comments. Also, let me know what you read in the month of April. I am so excited to see what May brings. I have some fun things coming up in May that I can't wait to tell you guys about. And yeah, I hope you guys are having a fantastic week, reading some 5-star reads, and I'll see you in the next video.